Hello, welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. I'm your host, MJ Taylor, aka the Black Wine Guy, and my guest today is James Molesworth, senior editor at the Wine Spectator Magazine. Super excited to have you here. A little bit about James. He is based in the New York office, and he's the lead taster for California Cabernet, Bordeaux, and the Rhone Valley region, and Port.
Yep.
And up until 2020, he regularly traveled to those areas
Yeah.
to visit wineries, to taste wines, and do his reports. When he's not tasting wine or writing, my man's got the dope-ass vinyl collection you've seen on Instagram, or he's hitting the gym. I see his post about skip the burger, get the salmon and the salad.
Yep.
You know, so I love that you are into the wine and wellness and creating that making a sustainable lifestyle. And welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So James and I connected through Instagram.
Yep.
Instagram is working for me. And
That's all we got to do since we've got to stay at home all the time now is
yeah,
spend time on Instagram.
I actually had a timer on it, and I was trying to spend only 15 minutes a day. That shit went out the window.
Yeah, I put my 1 hour limit on it. I'm pretty good when it locks. I don't override the lock too many times.
Yeah. So you write about King Cabernet, you write about Bordeaux,
Yep.
Bordeaux, and Rhone, all stuff I love. What wine did you bring today?
You said to bring a little something fun, so I brought a California Cabernet from Mount Veeder Winery, their 2017, and this is it's labeled Napa Valley because it blends fruit from Mount Veeder and then from the valley floor. So those different AVAs, they just call it Napa Valley, but it tastes very Mount Veeder-like. That 35% of Mount Veeder fruit really marks the wine, and I love the Mount Veeder wines because they have a very distinct fruit profile. It's a mix of red and blue and black fruits, and then there's a lot of herbaceous notes in there. And when I say herbaceous, I mean ripe herbaceous, not the overtly green.
Yeah, that vegetal,
not the
that
vegetal.
bell pepper. No, I'm getting that. It's
Yeah.
like you get
it's like
that
a
red.
sassafras and bay, sweet bay, and I just love the distinctive nature of them. They age very well. It's not that hard to find, and when it comes to California Cabernet, which basically starts at $100 and goes up quickly, this is a $45 bottle of wine that you can put in your cellar for 10 years. It's totally legit cab, and it's probably one of the best deals out there right now.
That's actually, I didn't realize it was still that affordable. That's that's really incredible. Price.
Yep.
I was like, Jesus Christ, that's so affordable for Napa Valley Cab. And yeah, I do get some mountain fruit. You're getting that black.
Yep.
Dark, and it's very structured. But the thing is, you just popped this. This is 2017. This is tasting pretty good right out the gate.
That's a function of the vintage, I think, which was a pretty good vintage up until a heat wave around Labor Day, and then that was the first year they had the big wildfires. Of course, they've got them going on right now. But in 2017, I find the wines are very expressive, very fruit forward. They don't have quite the backbone or spine of say 16 or 15, so they're really delicious now. There's some great wines, but it's the most inconsistent vintage the Valley has had since the rainy 2011.
Interesting. Well, so you actually just came back from Napa Valley.
I did, yeah.
And so you were on the front lines of just the devastation that's going on there.
Yeah, well, the first responders were on the front lines, and some of the people I know were literally in it up to their waist. I got to tour around a little bit with the road closures, and I didn't have an ag pass to get past the roadblocks. I didn't have full access to stuff, but I was in touch with a lot of winemakers and people who were really dealing with it head on, and this one was scary. I mean, the wildfires in general are scary, but this was weird because it started at 3 a.m, really took off in a hurry under just ideal conditions for a wildfire, hot, dry, windy. And it moved across the valley floor, which is not really typical of how the wildfires move up there. And our coverage on Wine Spectator, there's about 24 wineries that are gone. Meadowood, parts of Meadowood is gone. I mean, there were a visual aspect to the photographs that were coming out of there that I think people went, whoa, as opposed to, say, just a burned car or other wildfire debris. This was stuff that people knew and had been to and had visited and spent time, and so this was more visceral, and people were scared. And then, of course, the air quality was just horrific. By it started on a Sunday, and by Tuesday you could smell it, and by Wednesday in downtown Napa, it was thick with smoke. You needed an N95 mask just to walk around the block. It was nasty.
Now, is this your first time ever experiencing wildfires in California?
Yeah, first time to be there while it happened. So, it had a different effect on me as opposed to, just reading a newspaper report and seeing some photos, but seeing what people had to deal with. A lot of these grape growers they're truly agricultural, and a lot of them have mixed farming. So, I had one winemaker out there, Lily Berlin from El Molino. She had to move 4 cats, 3 dogs, a couple of horses. I mean, this is not just leaving your house, which is traumatic and stressful. But this is a lot of moving pieces out there, and it's in the middle of harvest, which was, a real logistical nightmare for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think people who live on the East Coast don't understand earthquakes and wildfires. I'll be honest, earthquakes are kind of cool. They're weird because you're like, the first time I was in an earthquake, I was like, wait, is there a subway station underneath it? Because that it has that, like, it was there's right. Like rollers, and there's different types of, and I was like, dude, you're in Santa Barbara, there's no subway. So, and then I actually went outside, a tree was moving like, wah, wah. So yeah. Earthquakes, but I remember, because I lived out in Santa Barbara for 10 years, wildfires, there's nothing like that on the East. There's nothing like, and like you said, normally they get stopped on the mountain. They very rarely get burned down to the ground, But you can look up and see a ridgeline. It's just all on fire. Like it's the most.
It's scary.
It's apocalyptic.
It's flat out scary, right. and you just don't understand the scale of it until you're there. Right. It's not a dumpster fire. It's the entire mountain is on fire, right. And you see it moving, and it's really scary, especially at night. Yeah. I mean, it's most dramatic. Yeah.
Totally. And then there's that eerie, you see some of the pictures, you saw them in Portland and Washington and other places. But then there's this surreal beauty because the smoke, the sun is like red when it's coming up. It's but until I don't, like you said, unless you've actually seen a wildfire, you have no idea of, like, it makes you really feel insignificant. Like you have these people, they're putting their lives at risk to and like you said, and then when you go and you see the devastation, when you see some place you've been or a house you've driven past for years, and it's just burnt down, and days later there's still smoke.
Right, and the next one hasn't even been touched, which is the other weird thing that people don't realize. These things move so fast, and they're so pointed in their direction that they can literally just go by 2 houses, not touch one, and the other one's gone.
It's totally like backdraft. It's seeking the path of least resistance. Like, okay, we're going to just burn through these. Yeah. So it's I mean, I hate to say, but it's probably, for you as a journalist, it's good that you actually got to experience that on one level.
Exactly. On that level, I'm happy I was there, which sounds odd, but I was happy to see it firsthand and be able to empathize with people who are in that situation rather than simply call someone on the phone and say, hey, how's your house? And okay, right. I'm writing a news story, which, getting the information out is important, but being able to experience it firsthand is also, pretty critical.
Totally. So, as a journalist who used to travel all the time, so we have a couple things happening right now that I want to ask you about. So one, COVID-19. I mean, for one, I know that there's a lot more wine available at retail that was restaurant only. Mm-hmm. You can talk about that. But two, what do you think? What's going to happen with the hospitality and wine industry with the COVID?
I mean, this is a huge problem, and it's pretty devastating that it's taking the government so long to realize just how critical this industry is. I can understand the need to deal with the airline industry and some other industries, but I don't think anybody realized how woven into the fabric of everyday life the restaurant is. It is something we all really took for granted, especially in a place like New York City where you walk out and you can just pick any place on your block. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure you have friends. I have friends who have been out of work through all of this. Mm-hmm. And just the frustration of not being able to go out and share a meal with friends and family is devastating. As to what it's going to do to the industry, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about how they have to, redo their margins and reformulate their business, how it works. But I don't see how they can do that. The food costs are the food costs. Mm-hmm. The staff is the staff costs. Staff relies on tipping to a certain extent. I mean, I don't see how they can just double prices in order to not be basically paying bills, from hand to mouth as they run these businesses. So this is a narrow margin business. Mm-hmm. It's run by people who are extremely passionate about what they do, and it's part of this country's fabric that needs to be there. So because of that need, I think it will come back. I think it's going to come back in fits and starts, and it's going to be based on when they can open, when do people feel safe going out to dine, a lot of these aspects. But it's got to come back. But we can't take it for granted again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm actually on the way into the studio. I was reading a article. I think my producer posted. I was like, who posted? Was it you? Was it you? The New England Journal of Medicine, for the first time, has made a presidential election recommendation based on the incompetence of the leadership. And I don't get too political on the show, but like this, what has happened to people, to the industry I love, and it's like, and then for them to do that, that's huge. And you work, and you're a journalist, and every senior editor signed off on it too. There was no disagreement. There's so much at stake. Like you said, there's so much of the American way of, when people talk about the American way of life, going out to a restaurant is part of the American way of life.
Right.
I'm not talking Fridays and Applebee's,
Yep.
right? You know what I mean? And when you talk about entrepreneurs, these are hardworking people who are passionate. They're artists, in fact. And the fact that we haven't protected them, it's pretty atrocious. Which, while we're on top of government, so then tariffs. How are tariffs affecting Bordeaux, the Rhone? I mean, Europe in general, but I mean, Bordeaux,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah, the tariffs were definitely a big issue this year, and they've basically been kicking the can down the road on this and putting in new tariffs, so the threat of new tariffs is there. There were some loopholes in the tariffs that allowed certain wines to get through without being taxed, but other ones are feeling the pinch. Let's face it, imports from France are off, and that's a function of pricing, and some domains are getting hurt. Others, though, are thriving, as what you alluded to in your opening comments, where at retail you now have access to a lot of wines that only used to go to restaurants, but with the restaurants not up at full capacity, a lot of that wine is shifting to retail. So consumption is up in America,
for sure.
but it's the brands that people are familiar with and that they know well, and that are easier to find and have that what they call continuity. They're never run out because they're always there, even when they make a vintage change. Those brands are doing very, very well. And then, of course, the collectors who can and are lucky enough to still be doing well in this time, they're snapping up all the allocated stuff. And then there's that middle tranche of basically anything above $25, to 100, which is not moving as fast as you might think.
Yeah.
And the European exports have been hurt. They haven't been devastated by tariffs, but they've been hurt. COVID in general is a bigger problem than the tariffs.
Sure.
But we need to get rid of those tariffs for the wine industry. It's affecting too many people along the chain, from the producer to the importer to the distributor to the retailer and then the consumer. They're not working.
Yeah, for me, I'm perplexed. From a logic sense, you're supposed to be pro-business as a party,
right?
Pro-American dream. You're putting so many small business owners and entrepreneurs out of business with these policies.
Yep. And you're penalizing an industry that had nothing to do with the initial squabble, which was over airline subsidies between Airbus and Boeing, and both sides basically are at fault. So it's come on, guys.
Yeah, and we're gonna. It's like Billy did it.
Yep.
It's one of those right on the playground.
Yep.
Oh my God. So tell me, man, how'd you get into wine?
So I got into wine, thankfully, from parents who were essentially Francophiles, and my father was an academic. My mother was a work-at-home mom who then had a coterie of jobs throughout her life, and so they entertained often, and they were the kind of dinners where everyone sits around the table for a couple hours, and when you're an 8-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, you're like, oh man, when is this gonna be over? But as I grew up, I started to realize this is kind of cool, right? You can hang out with the adults, you get to have this adult conversation. They're drinking this cool thing. I'd get the little glass like that with a drop of water in it.
Yep.
And hearing them talk about it and waxing poetic on it, I'm like, well, I need to find out more about this. So when I was in college, I was the guy in the frat who was drinking the wine when everyone else was drinking the beer. Kind of helped, on the dating scene a little bit.
I was gonna say, so
it's
just
all
so
part of the plan, yeah.
So James. So a movie for you to watch, man. If you can find, I don't know where it's at. I bought it when Blockbuster years ago.
Yeah. Now you're dating yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I used to go to Blockbuster.
Yeah, I look good for my age. I'm okay with it, man. It's called The Gristle, and The Gristle is a movie. It was actually the first movie, and might still be the only movie where it's an independent film, and it's an African American director, and he financed it. He got an SBA loan. He filled out he found a loophole, and he got $25,000. He made this movie. It's called The Gristle. It's funny. It's a comedy. It's hilarious. Find if you can.
Okay. I'm a movie buff, and I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go track it down.
But you remind me of this character in there, and the character in the movie is called Smooth White Boy. And so, you're in college, you're in the frat house, and you're like, hey, I've got this mouton.
Actually, there wasn't any mouton when I was in college because I was on the college, budget. I was drinking a lot of Guanac Petit Syrah.
Guanac, but that's a good bottle. That's a good play.
Which
Wow.
was $9.99 back then, and that hit the sweet spot.
And so you went to where? You went to?
I went to UMass Amherst.
Okay.
In Western Mass. Yeah. And
Pioneer Valley.
Pioneer Valley, yeah. And I had a great time there.
How could you not? So we're going to get into it. See, so that's where I would have went to school in the Pioneer Valley because I have a friend who was the president of Hampshire College for 19 years.
And part of the
Five College Consortium.
Yeah. Right.
So, Smooth White Boy, did you take classes at Smith just to be around girls?
I did not take classes at Smith, but I did go visit Smith on several occasions, yes.
Yeah.
Along with Holyoke and Amherst and Hampshire, yeah.
It's for all you kids can't be listening to this, but if you happen to be 21 and you're not in college, go to the Five College Consortium because they got a whole bus system.
Yeah, no, it was a great
go
time.
around So and Guanac Petit Syrah. Why Petit Syrah? Because I love Petit Syrah.
I think it hit the price point. It was something I saw on the wine rack with my parents, so
Okay.
that, and then obviously it was like maximum fruit impact on for a sip. So it was a way to get introduced to wine easily in that time. And then when I got out of college, I went back home. I was living with my parents for a couple weeks, and after a couple weeks, I said, "This cannot continue. I got to get a job." My degree did nothing for me. I had an anthropology and Afro-American studies degree, which that and $2 gets you on the subway, as they say. So I answered a job listing in the paper back then when you had to look at jobs in the help wanted section, at a wine retailer called Burgundy Wine Company. And my dad, who taught at Queens College, he was colleagues with Steve Tanzer's wife.
Okay.
And so he got a letter of recommendation for me from Steve Tanzer. So I walked into this wine shop knowing anything about anything and handed this letter of recommendation over to the owner. He kind of looks at it and looks at me and he's like, "Who are you? How do you get, this is for a stock boy position. You got a letter of recommendation from Steve Tanzer." So I got the job. And that was just the rest is history. But it was a great experience there. The store was very tiny, specialized in Burgundy only.
Yeah.
There was the owner, the manager, and myself. And every day the manager would cook lunch in the office on a hot plate, which was pretty amazing. And being 21 and making $20,000 a year, I was happy to have the free lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And the owner would go down in the basement. He'd come up with a bottle in a bag. He'd pour it out, and he'd say, "Tell me about it." And I did that every day for 3 years. Basically learned how to taste blind that way. And I learned on Burgundy first, which is arguably the most confusing area.
Oh.
And then everything else fell into place. I left from there. I went to the 21 Club. I was a sommelier there for a year and did not dig that much. I'm not cut out for restaurant work. Again, I tip my hat to those people. That would be the job that I would say I don't want to do.
Right.
But I had done it, so I couldn't answer that question before. And then I got lucky. I bumped into an old friend who was already at Wine Spectator at that point. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm working nights and opening wine. He said, "How'd you like to work days and open wine for the tasters at Wine Spectator?" And I said, "Sold."
Damn.
And I've been there almost 25 years now.
Shit.
Yeah.
I'm never 25 years in one place. Good for you. I love that. Okay, so Steven Tanzer, what was it? International Wine Report you used to do?
International Wine something. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
IWC, International Wine Cellar. I think it was International Wine Cellar. IWC.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And who's he with now?
He sold his database of notes essentially to Negroni, I believe. I'm not sure
what
Steve is doing now.
Yeah, sometimes I see some of the stuff show up on Vinuous somewhere. Yeah. Just because there's probably some people like, who's Steve Tanzer?
Yeah.
I know who he is. That's pretty cool. I met him at a tasting. I worked at Acker. And I didn't have, same thing. It was like, you're going to drink the finest wines in the world on a nightly basis. And they have the wine workshop. And I'd work 12 hours in the store. And then I'd go pour for the wine workshop, get a taste of wines. Right. But I love your story about like you got really like a total, you got the food and wine experience. Like the owners cooking, like that's like so European, like like the siesta, like
full lunch break,
full lunch break, and then wine, and then Burgundy is, Burgundy is, what Burgundy is.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Burgundy, but I tell people it's just so much easier to drink California Pinot and Oregon Pinot because it's.
Well, what's the old expression? Of the 10 greatest wines 10 greatest wine disappointments I ever had, 9 were Burgundy.
Well, and that's the thing
and of
too.
the 10 greatest wines I had, 5 were Burgundy.
Exactly.
So it's like you're constantly fighting with it.
And it's because there's such small plots. Like that shit's expensive, man. Yeah. It's not for the average person. Like if you know producers, even a good Bourgogne is $40-$50, right? Like, so for most
these
people,
days, I mean, they're $50, which is kind of crazy.
Right. But so for most people, they're never really going to get to try those wines. Yeah. So it's really cool that you came in the gate blind tasting Burgundy.
Yeah.
And then the sommelier, like, what do you think about, like, not I don't think about, but like I think it's interesting because I worked at a little place in California. In Montecito, it's called the Wine Bistro. It's no longer there. It's now a Mexican restaurant. So on Coast Village Road. If you ever been down to Santa Barbara, I would work in the wine store, and then some nights, busy nights, I'd be the som in the restaurant. Like, but now it's like everybody's a certified som. Before it's just like if you knew wine, you knew how to talk to people, you could sell on the floor.
Yeah, it was a very different time for the wine industry then. The whole sommelier Gestalt culture, whatever you want to call it, had not really blossomed yet. And while some of those organizations may have been around, they were not front and center the way they are today. Right. Basically, you fell in with a mentor, and you basically learned at their hip.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned. Yeah. I mean, I was a voracious reader, and I read everything I could, but basically it was you taste, and you learn how to describe them. And the key is to taste all the different things. I see a lot of people today focusing on certain things, which is well and good. And professionally, I focus on certain regions.
Sure.
But I think that it's important to constantly be tasting stuff you've never heard of. You don't know where it's from. You don't know anything about it. That's the fun. That's what got us into this business in the first place. And keeping that drive alive is really important.
Yeah, I agree. Dustin Wilson was on the show, and I told him, I said, back in '99, I was like, it was like, well, if you know wine, you don't have to get certified. Just you just keep tasting. That was literally the advice. I was like, I didn't know there was gonna be movies about sommeliers and you guys would become rock stars and drive the industry for and that's the thing. Even to this day, like people are like, I know so much wine. I said, you know how much wine I've tasted in my life? Just and I'm still to this day like, I'll buy a bottle, whatever's funky, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try whatever weird. I'm going to try a Pedro Jimenez from Latin America. Right. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Because I want to have, I'm like, I've had that. I've had that. People are like, have you had this one? I'm like, yeah, I've had it. Right. And that's the ultimate thing. And I think one thing, and I talk about this, so you have a lot of people who want to be influencers on Instagram and everything, and they might have their Wisset 1 or 2, and I'm like, okay, so you tasted 18 wines. That's what you're telling me. I don't know which wine you've actually tasted, bro.
Right. The other thing I think is really important is, I mean, I learned how to taste blind basically naturally, and that's what we do professionally at Wine Spectator. I think we're the only ones that do it that way. I think that's really important, and that's what I always tell people to do is you should also taste blind, consumer, other professional, whatever, to remove the bias of who made it and how much it costs is so instructive, because then you just focus on what's in the glass. And doing that and combined with, taste things that either you don't know anything about or you think you don't like.
Right.
Because it's just as important to know why you don't like something as it is to understand why you like it. Okay, I don't drink a lot of big oaky Chardonnays. I like one every now and then from time to time, but I still need to understand what's going on with them, and I need to taste them every now and then. So I'm never going to turn my nose off or turn my nose up at something that normally I wouldn't drink, because you're still going to learn something from it.
Right. Yeah, I'd say people and yeah, you guys do taste blind, which I see why you do that, because ultimately, I mean, the thing about wine is the story, right? So if this is so and so's wine, and the vines are this old, like in your subconscious mind, it is going to affect it.
I mean, we're an independent, third-party consumer advocacy magazine, and so our ratings matter because of that, and then we have to keep that ethical standard by tasting blind, obviously, because we accept advertising in the magazine. But if we knew what, I mean, there's so many studies that show that if you know what it is, you're just ever so slightly biased. And so when someone says, well, I'm not biased because I tell you I'm not biased and I'm being as honest as I can be, you may believe that,
right?
But the reality is, if I show you it's Lafite, you're going to dig it. And if you're tasting and you don't know it's Lafite, you might say, there's a little tannic to that.
Right,
I'm not into this, right? So
right.
removing the context is important, but you also don't want to remove the context entirely. So we do know appellation and vintage, or in the case of New World Wines, varietal and vintage. Those are the two pieces of information we have when we're tasting.
Oh, very cool, very cool. And I think that I dig that. I think I noticed like your scores are a little bit lower than a lot of the other publications, the more prominent publications, like, so I'm like, oh, this white Rhone got a 93 from James Molesworth. I'll try that out. Or this South African Chenin Blanc. Even though I'm like, because you look at this, I look at the scores. I'm like, yeah, like I bought the Chenin Blanc. It was like $60. Mm-hmm. You recommended it. South African was like 93 points, but your notes were on point. And I was like, and you look at their scores. I'm like, that's a pretty high score for these guys. You know what I mean?
I do think we're the toughest. I have never given 100 in print. I don't think any of my colleagues have recently. I mean, it's been several years since I think we had 100 in print. We've given them out over time. I think it's important to remember that there's always some place to go. There's always a way to improve. I've never met a winemaker who said, that's the best wine I've ever made, and then the next year they didn't say, actually.
Right, I agree. I think even people who get the 100-point scores, they don't go out and say, well, I know how to get a 100-point score. They're doing the same work. They're doing even different work. They're tweaking it. They're changing the blend. They're like, last year was 60% Cab and 20% Malbec. But this year they're still working. So you're right. So it's.
I think there are perfect wines for the moment.
Right.
When you add emotion into it and you add in other context, as you say, the story or who you're with or the anniversary or the vintage that you're celebrating, all that sort of stuff can have a perfect moment. But viewing it from strictly a consumer perspective, I can't say that something that had the hand of a human involved in the process is perfect, because that doesn't exist.
I would have to agree.
But that notwithstanding, if I feel a wine is 100 points, I will give it. I've just never had that experience when I'm sitting there tasting professionally.
Right.
I've had moments where I'm like, okay, but that's on the back porch with someone, and the sun's going down, and everything's copacetic.
Totally,
it's a different thing.
Yeah, it's like it's very rare. Even like when I would go to industry tastings, and like people understand too. Like it's quick. It's not enjoying the wine per se. Like it's just like you got to make a judgment call. You're seeking out notes. You're seeking. Right. It's not like, but like you said, like when you're with the right person at the right time. The right album's on. It's like, fuck, this is delicious.
Especially when the right album is on.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is so fucking delicious. Like that's when you get like, oh, all right, yeah, this wine's
and
a
that's
bomb.
When you go and you open another bottle.
Exactly.
Then that's a slippery slope.
And it is total slippery slope, because then like there's a point. I tell you, there's a point in the night where like I call them burner bottles. Like you ever watch the Wire? They got the burner phones, right? Gotta have burner bottles, right? Because like. You don't need another $70, $80 bottle of wine. You think we do. And like you're like, oh, this is delicious.
It's true.
And
the other thing I try to do is when I'm tasting is focus on quality first and then style second. There are wines of all different types out there. As I say, big oaky Chardonnays versus steely, minerally Chardonnays. You can have a 95-point big oaky Chardonnay, and you just don't like big oaky Chardonnay, but you have to be able to say, well, that's a terrific wine for that style.
100%.
And that's, I think, really important. So, sometimes people say, well, I align myself to this critic or this wine writer, and I think that is good, but that sometimes a lot of the critics have a very specific palate preference.
Right.
As long as they're consistent and as long as you see that as the consumer, fine. My approach is a little different. It's a little anthropological, which is I try to take myself out of the equation. I just try to observe and report.
Professor Molesworth.
There are wines that are totally different stylistically. I give them the same score. I might not buy that with my own money to put in my own cellar, but that doesn't mean I can't say that is a terrific example of that type. And I think you can just translate that to movies, to music, to books, right? You don't like Westerns, but you have to say, well, John Ford knows how to make a movie.
Right.
I mean, so there's it's just all part of judging in life. You have to take
The Good, Bad, and the Ugly was a great Western.
Yes.
And it's a spaghetti Western. It's a great Western.
Yeah.
And I talked about that on another show with another guest. I said, listen, you need to understand, a wine could be a 99-point wine. It's varietally correct. Mm-hmm. But if you don't like pencil shavings, if you don't like shit-dipped pencil tips, if you don't like mushrooms, if you don't like grainy tannins, but you have to be as your job. Like you have to. I can say that is spot on from that appellation. I don't want to drink. Like I said,
Right.
you have to know what I'm glad it was someone else's dime
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
You know, I had a 95 Cologne cigar. A buddy had it. He'd been holding it. It was spot on. Not really my type of wine, but it was delicious. I respected what it was,
Right.
and it was actually too young. I mean, even at 95. I mean, so that's that game, and also what I like what you said about if you are going to go with scores, and I think I don't have a problem with scores. I think they give you a baseline. I think you have to read and you have to do your own research. You have to know, does my palate align with this person's palate, right? So.
Right.
You guys have a different palate taster, so people have to, say, do I like this wine? Whose palate do I like? Blah blah blah. But it is considering that, and I think what you guys do, what all critics do, is kind of give a guide and give people.
Exactly. We want educated consumers.
Right.
We love to tell the story. We love to support family-owned wineries. That's basically our edict, and get the information out there. But our mantra is to educate and entertain. So we want people to make an educated decision about something that they're going to be spending some money on, and also give them the story behind it, because there's a lot of wineries out there that have a terrific story. They're wonderful people. They work hard, but they don't have the time to tell their story to every consumer out there.
They're farmers. Most of them.
they're
I
farmers.
mean, they're like. I remember when I met Gary Pisoni, like in 1999. He's like, I'm a farmer, man.
Yeah.
He's like, they don't know marketing. He's like a third generation farmer.
Right.
Like you said, he's growing asparagus and broccoli and other stuff, and then up on the mountain he's got grapes, right? So,
Yeah, but I think scores are here to stay, and I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
quality. When I say quality scores, the ones that readers can rely on, as you say, you bought the wine and the note was spot on, and so for you the score was low, but you appreciate that because it means that we're tough.
Right.
So that just made my day.
yeah, no, it was good, man. I was like, it was good. It was very good. And, so I think we also have this in common, like music and wine.
I mean,
Let's talk vinyl, baby.
yeah. I mean, I'm a hopeless romantic, stuck in the past.
Are you a
lot.
Cancer? What's your sign, bro?
I'm a Libra.
A Libra. Oh,
Yeah.
it's Libra season.
Yeah, and so I'm shining right now. It's my time.
Yes, time to shine.
But yeah, music and wine. I mean, I couldn't give up. If I had to give up one, I would give up wine. I couldn't give up music.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, music is life. But I mean, so like you have a pretty, I follow you on Instagram. That's how I found you. You have a pretty intense wine and vinyl collection. How many records you? How many vinyl records you have? Approximately.
About 1,400. It's a modest collection. There's it's not professional DJ level.
But that's a lot of records, bro. First of all, there's very few DJs who have that many records now. They're called turntablists, and they use a computer.
Yeah,
which I don't.
Whenever I walk in and see that, I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, I thought I was dope. My little 600 records.
Yeah.
You just put me to shame.
No, I mean I still DJ a little bit with records, but it's not the kind of DJing that's popular today. I actually let the whole song play.
No, there was this guy,
and I do it on a record, and I cue it up, and it's curated music is what I do. Yeah.
I love that. There was this spot in Santa Barbara. I can't remember the name because I used to drink so much back then. I was in my 30s, but they would have this DJ, and his name was Manabu, and he would come in, and he had two turntables, but he would play the whole record. Like he would play the original that the hip hop people would sample.
I love to play
And
the
that's
original
it,
and then play the sample one.
man.
And I'll look out in the room and I'll see people go, "Hey, wait a minute!"
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm
right.
like, there's always an
Exa-
original.
exactly.
You need to know the original. Yeah.
Right. And so I would just go and just chill out, and I'd be like geeking out next to him, like, "Oh man, that was gangster." Oh, he's like, and I was like, "Dude, I love what you're doing here."
Yeah.
And it was more of a, like you said, how'd you describe that again?
It was like, what you mean when I looked out and see people in your
No, yeah. When you played a record, like what
curated music.
exactly.
Right,
Yeah. It was just a beautiful, curated.
Yeah. Well, because I did radio when I was in college. I had a radio show, and so that's where I fell in love with it. That's where I did the deep dive. That's where I got my love for jazz and blues. I had a jaz show on the radio.
What was the name of your jazz show?
The Wailing Interval. which was named for the Paul Gonsalves solo on Diminuendo and Crescendo in Blue that Duke Ellington played at the Newport Jazz Festival in the 1940s that basically put the crowd into a riot. It's like 32 choruses. It's this long solo. He basically just goes off. And like, you can hear on the recording, the crowd is like starting to get wild. And there's a legend that the police officer or security or whoever comes up to Ellington on the bandstand. It's like, yo, man, you got to make them stop. They're going crazy out there. And Ellington turns to him and says, if I make them stop, they're going to really go crazy. So the wailing interval, it was a blast. And it was part of that college experience, too, which was classic because the first 2 years I partied. I had like a 1.8 GPA or something, right? I was about to flunk out. My parents said, hey.
Your dad was an academia, college professor.
Yeah, so basically they said,
so
look.
proud of you.
He was not proud of me. He said, we do not pay for failure. So from this point on, you can either succeed or you can pay your own way through college. So that obviously wasn't going to work. So I succeeded from that point on and dove into the college radio, the college newspaper, the college student government. I picked up the Afro-Am minor. Like I just went whole hog into the academic thing and loved it. And on staff there was Archie Shepp and Yusef Lateef and Max Roach. Which, you know, for a young kid learning jazz, like these guys are still alive and they're at my college. Oh my God. So that was just really intense. And that's where that love came from. Yeah.
I used to hang out with Max Roach's daughter. She went to Wesleyan and I dated a bunch of chicks from Wesleyan. Cool dude. Yeah. Small world. But so what I love about your show was like, it was so specific. It was about this one riff in a show at the Newport. It wasn't just like, I just called it the Smooth White Boy Show. Smooth White Boy Jazz Show. Hi, I'm James Molesworth from New York City. But that's even like, he blew me away with that one. See, this guy, but when you say that, it makes so much sense that you do what you do now. Like your approach. It's like your approach to life is very.
It's how my brain works. If once I find something I like, I'm gonna have to drill down deep and find out everything I can about it. And you know, when I was a kid, I knew every baseball stat. And I bought the baseball encyclopedia, which was a book like literally that big, and I used to just flip through and read it. And then it became baseball cards, and it was comic books, and then it became, you know, music and records, and then wine. And so just the way my mind works, I just kind of absorb it and deep dive it and just get a little manic with it.
Yeah, no, I kind of do that. I like to get to empirical sources, and I like go down rabbit holes. So I totally understand that. And like for instance, like I ran track and field, and there used to be a magazine. Magazines are dying. So glad you guys are still around, by the way. I know you do. You guys do a great job with the digital. But you also, it's nice to go to the Whole Foods and see the print. You know, the cover. But there was this magazine called Track and Field News, and then they had this thing called the Track and Field Newsletter. So Track and Field News came out monthly, but they would just send out. It was like literally they would mail you, folded up. It was just like all the times from the track meets that week. And I was that geek. Like I knew every freaking world record from 100 meters to the marathon. Blah blah. I mean, so that's what kind of way my brain works too. So when I got into wine, I was like, oh my God, I didn't know wine was. Oh my, you're like, oh my, this clone and that clone and the soil and the sun exposure. So it just like for me, like it just allowed, because I like. In school, I wouldn't say I was a know-it-all, but like school's boring. Let's be honest, school's kind of boring, right? Like you got to have stuff you're passionate about that you're gonna want to research and dive into, right? And so like I love having things like that, like you know, and like also with music, like this side project, you know, like what's like your favorite, which is hard because you have fortunate, but like what do you like? What would you say like? I'm always enthralled by side projects. You get side projects in wine. You get side projects in music. You get people who do jam sessions and they have these crazy, like this is time Diz and Max and Phil, you know, got together. Like what's like your craziest kind of like mashup there, like your with jazz or
the one album that always fascinates me is Money Jungle, which is Duke Ellington, Max Roach, and Charles Mingus. And the three of them never recorded other than that one time. And to have a trio without the horn, I think is always fascinating with that classic rhythm section setup. And three disparate players. I mean, Ellington was a totally melodic, you know, stretch out. Mingus and was a bit more frenetic in his playing. And Max was, you know, just the polyrhythm of Max Roach's drum set is just kind of like a thing in and of itself. So you got these three maestros who undoubtedly had egos of their own coming together, and then they've got to share space, and they did it. Although there is also a fascinating story about that session where after a couple of tunes, Mingus apparently like gets up and storms out of the room, in a sense of like I can't do this, right? And the reaction was like, well, he thinks he's too big for this. And in reality, what he was saying, like, I can't play with this cat, Ellington. He's
too good.
He's too good.
Right.
Yeah, he was doing it as an homage. And Ellington, walked down the hallway and got him at the elevator and said, hey, come on, Matt, let's finish the gig. And they finished. And it's a beautiful album, Money Jungle.
Nice. That will be in the show notes. Thank you for that. Yeah, and then like,
I mean, to me, I love reading liner notes on these old albums.
Oh yeah.
Some of them are so dated in their way, but you get these little snippets of information, and to me, the liner notes are basically like reading tasting notes because they give you information
Right.
that you might not pick up on, and it just enhances your enjoyment of it. And so that's, I think the tasting note part of wine is as important. It's more important than the score. The score is, of course, important because that's the snapshot. But the note, because you have to read it and understand, is this an old school wine? Is this a fruit bomb wine? What's going on here? And to me, they're the same, liner notes and tasting notes. They give you that little, pinpoint bits of information that make it that much more enjoyable.
Oh, that's a great analogy, man. And that's what I love, and that's what I love about vinyl. People don't get, like, vinyl was a whole package, right? The album art.
The album, you take the shrink wrap
Yeah,
off,
exactly, right?
It's the gatefold. You open that one up.
Yeah, the gatefold. Even if it was one album, it had a gatefold. There's a picture inside, and then you pull it out, and then I love all the old Atlantic records. Like I have a lot of funk, R&B stuff, and like on the back it has like all the albums they're trying to sell. You know what I mean? Like it was like a different era versus. And then with CDs it was small, so the art was still there. But now you got like this little box on your little MP3. Right. That's not
right.
And kids don't understand. You kids do not understand live music. Like I remember, there's a point in Green Onions where the drummer's drum just scrapes across his microphone, and like that's part of it's breathing. It's like alive, right? Which is like wine. Wine is breathing. It's alive. It's a living thing. It's growing. So. Yeah, definitely. There's that total crossover. So, like, what's your like? So I know you're a Rhone guy. I mean, well, I know you cover the Rhone, you cover Bordeaux, you cover California Cabernet. This is hard, but if you had to, like, what's your shit? What's your jam? What's?
I mean, the Rhone is where my heart is, and that's that seed was planted very early on. I was 8 years old, traveling with my dad through the Rhone. Again, no clue of what I was going to do.
Right.
I'm an 8-year-old kid, but there was just something that got planted that day in that region, and I've always been in love with the Rhone. So when I got to cover the Rhone professionally, I mean, first off, I was super stoked, but then I also realized, well, I need to back this up a little bit. I cannot go in this as a rah-rah, I love everything just because I love the Rhone. I have to be twice as hard on myself and critical in my approach to it, so that I didn't get to be a rah-rah. And then, Bordeaux, I have tremendous respect for Bordeaux. I do love those wines, and I started on California before I started on France as a consumer, so my heart has a bit of itself in California as well, so to do Cabernet. But outside of what I cover, and I'm glad that I like the regions I cover because it keeps them fresh and interesting for me, but I drink a lot of champagne. I still drink a fair amount of Riesling. I love Nebbiolo. I don't delve into it that deep. I mean, I spend so much time on what I cover that I don't get to really go deep on other areas.
It's got to be hard.
Yeah.
Really, people don't understand. Like, I'm not joking. Like, it's got to be hard when you're tasting thousands of wines,
Yeah.
To, Nebbiolo is interesting. It's good, but I never can really get into it. I mean, it's good. It's beautiful. It's beautiful stuff, But I can see, the wine country I lived in was California, so I love California, Central Coast.
Yep.
A lot of Rhone stuff. I love the Rhone. I mean, the bottle, like, what was the bottle? So you're 8 years old. You're traveling. Your parents were Francophiles. They love France.
Right.
So did you go often, or just was this one? Was the 8-year-old was a telling trip? Or
yeah, no, my parents traveled a lot when I was growing up. So and we were often in Europe. It was usually England or France. I've been to Italy once or twice.
Any relatives over there, or just
no? But a lot of travel, and I'm very lucky for that form of education.
It's the best. I kind of work my day job. Right now I work with kids, and exposure. That's people don't get it's exposure.
Yeah.
Is the biggest educator.
Right.
So that's really and I love that you're grateful for it. Like, you don't take it for granted, man.
No, and prior to COVID, I used to tell people I treat every wine trip for work as if it's going to be my last trip because I honestly don't know will I get back here. Of course,
Right.
think I'm going
I mean,
to,
a
but
planes crash.
yeah,
I mean, stuff happens, right?
I'm stuffing everything I can into every trip to max it out, and now here I've gone almost a year without traveling overseas, and I don't know when I'm going to get back because it's not even allowed for all intents and purposes right now.
We are nation non grata.
So,
by the way, I didn't know it was going to go there, but we actually are in prison right now. We cannot leave.
Yeah.
People don't get. We can't leave.
Canada won't take us. Mexico won't take us.
We can't leave. Like you need to.
And it's frustrating because we're in New York, which has one of the lowest rates in the 50 states.
Yeah.
And so, but I understand
totally.
situation. But for me not to travel to Europe, I'm just sort of like I'm very frustrated. I mean,
I can only imagine, man. Like you've been doing this for like 20 some odd years. Like, that's not like.
And now everyone wants to do something on Zoom, and I got to tell you, I'm calling bullshit on the Zoom. Virtual tastings. I mean,
that's why we're here in the studio, bro.
Yeah. Yes, people have to sell their wine. The information needs to get out. The job needs to get done.
Yep.
But I'm not going to sit there on a Zoom while someone else drinks the other bottle 3,000 miles away and have some real conversation about that bottle of wine.
Because we don't know. Because it's not the same bottle.
It's not the same bottle.
It's not the same. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the same experience. It's not. It's sterile. It's sterilized.
It really
the whole aspect that makes wine interesting and fun. It takes all the energy out of it. I'm just. So I've been trying to double up on going to California, which has had its own logistical problems because they had, a second wave and there was quarantine when I came back a couple times and that. But I've been going out there more often. I'm going out again at the end of this week, and so I'm counting my lucky stars that at least I can get there.
Yeah, no, I hear you on this. I mean, it's not the same. That wine was having a meal, opening a bottle, having a conversation like we're having now, and that doesn't happen. It doesn't translate through the screen. And like you said, you hit people. I get it. People need to sell wine. I love it. I understand it. But like when we started this, like I didn't know what I was doing. I got a producer. It was great. I found a producer, and she's like, "You need to go into a studio, like if you want to have a real show." And so I'm grateful that you're here because this is a different experience. Like. I could have called you. We could have done an Instagram live, but like it wouldn't be like you're like, oh, okay. I kind of like this MJ guy. He's kind of funny. He's not a dick. So, you've had a lot of success in wine. Like just hearing what your story,
No, I'm lucky. I mean, the people who are. I mean, the wine industry is full of people of passion who get to do what they want. But I mean, I really get to do what I want, and I'm lucky that the magazine has the resources to let me go do it in a way where we don't accept junkets, we don't accept travel assistants. When I go, I set my own schedule. We pay our own way. We do our own thing. I don't do paid followers on Instagram. I don't do any of that stuff. It's just as pure and monastic as it can be.
I love it. I love it,
and I dig it.
I love it. That's what we're building here too. Like I just got the 5,000 followers, and it's legit. It's true. I mean, I've studied internet marketing, and I know I can get in pods and I can go buy followers, but I don't want. That's not who I am. Never who I am. And if you're down with the black wine guy experience, you are. If you're not, you're not, and it's all good because I know what I'm doing, and we're having a good time, and I get to talk to people like you. Yeah. But with all that success, was there ever a point where you thought you might walk away?
I mean, there's been periods in my career, if you want to call it that I was either bored or frustrated, and I've been lucky along the line that every few years I was given a new responsibility that sort of broadened what I was doing, and at this point I'm maxed out. So I hope I don't get any more new responsibilities. I mean, my plate is full, but there's been. I mean, I think we all have some self-questioning at some point, and it usually happens right between the age of 39 and 41, I think, somewhere in there, where we start to go, what the hell am I doing?
Did you buy a Porsche, James?
I did not buy a car. No, I just bought more records.
Okay.
A lot more records. A lot more wine. But yeah, there's been, but no, I mean, my path has been fairly easy in that regard. I will say that I've earned what I've accomplished, but I know that there are other people in the industry who have not had the access to things the way that I have, and I'm grateful for that. And I think the events of this past year have opened a lot of eyes in the industry, which is pretty white, and we're aware of that. And we need to do a better job about that. We have tried, and we will continue to try at Wine Spectator to be more inclusive and to represent the industry in a more inclusive way. I hope people are seeing some of the subtle changes that are starting to permeate through the magazine's coverage. We're committed to that. I think the industry is having a bit of a self-analysis period too. And I will be the first to admit that I was not aware of a lot of things in the industry, and I've not seen things that other people have seen. So I need to be more aware of what's going on out there.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually did a video the other day just talking about like how much we delete, we don't even see. So I think in wine, it's great that people are becoming more aware. I don't necessarily think. I think it was a lot of blind spots, like you said.
Yeah.
I don't think there's certain industries where it's like blatant racism. I think wine just had these blind spots.
Yes.
And it's good that people are now saying, "Oh, holy shit! I didn't know. I didn't see."
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's fascinating to me is the language of wine. And it's very steeped in European tradition. We use French or Italian winemaking terms interchangeably. When we're speaking in English, we talk about batonnage and these types of things.
Terroir.
And terroir. And to understand that there are people out there who have never had that experience.
Right.
So when we're talking to them, we might as well be talking in a foreign language, which
Right.
in essence we are.
Right.
And we need to be aware of that. And that there is, in fact, other people who've developed their own language for wine, which is terrific and fascinating. And I need to know how they speak about wine and how they describe it, because invariably there's common ground, because
Right.
we're talking about the same thing,
Right.
but we're describing it in different ways, and that to me is fascinating.
I got your back on that, man.
All right.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. No, and that's I
But
love it.
I mean, the culture, the food,
Right.
right? We think that Bordeaux has to be drunk with French food. Well, why can't it be drunk with barbecue or why
tell you.
things like this?
There's few things better than Bordeaux and a burger.
Yeah. Bordeaux
I
and a
know.
burger.
I know. I see you keep it trim.
I'm trying.
But
It's not easy in COVID.
It's
but-
not, man. Listen, I put on 10 pounds with COVID. Now I have a good scale. My scale says my body fat's the same, which is actually more important. But I'm just not used to weighing this much, to be honest. And I literally for my job, not as cool. No, nowhere near as cool as yours. Not going to France and hanging out with Shav.
That man can cook, and his wife Erin is an absurd cook too.
Yeah.
I usually clear that day when I
Yeah, but I used to travel for work, and I just don't move as much.
Yeah.
I still do my same work. I just don't move as much, So
doing the same workout in your apartment is not the same.
No.
It's very frustrating.
Well, I work out at home, but
Yeah.
so I've been lucky. I figured that out because like friction, like if you have to drive to a gym 10 or 20, but I don't live in a city like you do, so everything's fun in the city. Walking to the gym, blah blah blah, and you're probably listening. You got your AirPods. You're probably listening to some cool jazz. You're looking at the ladies walking down the street on the way to the gym. Like, oh yeah, James is holding it. That's a different experience. So, well, let me ask you this: what's like what bottle of wine fucked you up? What knocked your socks off, man? You drink a lot of wine, but everybody who loves wine, there's a bottle of wine.
Yeah,
like,
there's
whoa.
that epiphany moment.
Yeah.
The epiphany moment for me was it was at Burgundy Wine Company, and sometimes the owner would bring up more than one bottle. So this was a day where
Don't you hate it when they do that?
Yeah. So he brought up two bottles side by side, and the first one I had was like, okay, this is good, whatever. And the second bottle I was like, wait, what? And the first bottle I went back to, and I was like, well, this is just grape juice. And the second one I was like, the sparks went off.
Yeah.
I saw all the details and the this and the that, and something clicked. The gut instinct clicked, and I said, well, that tastes like a Clos de Bez or a Grand Cru from Jerry Chambertin, and I don't even know what this is anymore.
Right.
It seemed fine on its own, but now
What is this crap?
What is this? I didn't want to say that, but I'm like, and he pulls the bag off, and it's a Clos de Bez and a Beaujolais Nouveau, which is the A to Z, right, of the wine hierarchy.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny when all of a sudden you're like, oh, now you see the two data points at the same time. You get it, all right? You were blind, so you had no clue, right? You couldn't put any additional context on. You just had to focus on what's in the glass, and now you get it. And you're like, oh, okay. Now I see why people are chasing this one down. Now I see why there's only 200 cases of this. Now I get it. I still can't afford it, right? But now I can appreciate it, and I see the scale. And that's why I tell people, that you learn wine with data points, and you start here, and then you add one, and so this one's here, and then this one's here, and it's like a bookshelf.
Right.
But it's also infinite, so it's constantly expanding and growing. The data points might be closer together. The more you have, if you have 100 Cabernets versus 1,000 Cabernets, right? Those data points get closer, but you have more data points, and the bookshelf gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's fascinating. And that was the day where I'm like, okay, there's a lot to learn here.
Right. And just talking with you for this time, like your mind, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm able to reverse engineer wines because I've had some of the best wines in the world. You know, when you guys came out with in 1999, I remember the top 10 wines of the century. I had been in the wine business like 2 years. I had 8 of the 10 wines because of where I worked, right? So like, you know, I'm like, oh shit, I can work backwards, and you're right. So once you have those data points and you can begin to put it together, I could see you being there. Like you said, this is like grape juice, right? Like it's a total like Chappelle, Tyrone Wiggums moment. Like, what is this Beaujolais Nouveau?
Yeah.
We call it grape drink. It's purple, you know, like Beaujolais. And I tell people though, but you got to get George DeBuff saved that region. So now you have the Cru Beaujolais that is the darling of the sommeliers because they weren't selling wine. So he came up with this label and he said, we're going to sell this juice for $7 and we're going to make a big deal out of it. We're going to take it to New York and we're going to have a party.
Right.
Same thing with White Zinfandel. Saved, you know, unfortunately, I wish White Zinfandel had saved more of those old vines. I know you're a cab guy, but
it did to some extent.
Charbono,
but
you know the history. Now, there's some, like, you know.
But I still like Beaujolais Nouveau Day. I mean, okay, it's kitschy and it's cliched, but you know, when I see a somm roll their eyes, oh man, it's Nouveau. Everyone's gonna be coming in asking for Nouveau. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, listen, you're selling wine, buddy.
People are walking into your store, right? And then that's your teaching moment point, right? Sell them their bottle of Nouveau and say, by the way, when you come back next time, I'm gonna take you up the next level.
Exactly.
And then you know, make a customer that way.
Yeah. No,
there's no bad wine. I mean, there's wines you may not want to drink, and there's flawed wine.
That's why I
but
said
the reality is,
right,
there's no bad region. There's no. I mean, wine around the world is so diverse and so much better than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's limitless at this point. You will never be able to get to it all.
Yeah, and that's what messed me up, and I love about wine. Like, it's just never ending because there's always it's like, oh, but wait. They make wine in Alaska. How the hell do they make wine in Alaska? Someone will find a way. Or they make wine in Antarctica. It's the best ice wine in the world. I mean, people will find a freaking way, right? You know what I mean? Where is there a wine region you'd like to visit that you haven't visited?
Yeah, in fact, there's many wine regions I have not visited. People think I've been everywhere because of what I do, but the reality is I'm in the places that I cover over and over and over again. I mean, I'd love to go to Australia and see the Barossa. I mean, I'd love to go to Germany and see the Mosel. I mean, there's spots that I just would love to see. You know, some of the areas that I have been to in Spain and Portugal and South Africa. I mean, again, I count my blessings because I saw some amazing stuff and I got to travel wide and far for that. But there's plenty of places I haven't gotten to yet.
If you go to Australia, I got a guy down in Australia. He actually
you hook me up.
Yeah, no, he's I've been talking with him, and he deals with like so many people who their wine isn't even imported here, and like yeah, so I can get you what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean the local culture of a wine region outside of this country is always just fascinating to me on every level. You know, whether it was Mendoza or being in Portugal in Porto and seeing all the wines on the list that never make it over here, and just all those indigenous varietal whites that are delicious with their food in that setting at that time. Again, like it's the perfect moment. It's a $20 bottle of white from a grape you've never heard of. In reality, it's probably going to score, you know, somewhere between 88 and 92. But at that moment, with that piece of fish sitting in Portugal, it's a 100-pointer, and it's a terrific experience.
Totally get that. I mean, even that was my experience when I moved to California. People don't realize how much wine in California doesn't even make it to New York. Like, they have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, and so imagine, like you said, Portugal or Argentina around the world, and that reminds me of the story. Like first time I had Albarino. I hadn't had Albarino. First time I had Albarino. The retailer, he was really into Spanish wines, and I just started working for him. He's like, oh, the first time, he's like, I remember having this wine. We were 500 meters above sea level on a bluff, and we had sardines with Albarino. It was perfect. Like, so that's what really, like you said, place, time, food, company, that is, you know, really what can pull it all together. Yeah. So, man, dude, this has been really fun.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's always nice to, especially in these days, to actually sit down with someone and talk.
So yeah, where let's I'll just ask you one more. I'll have a couple more questions because you're very fascinating. I haven't had any bad guests, but you're super bad. So you love music, live music. You a live music fan?
Yeah, oh, yeah, sure.
Best live show you've been to?
Oof, that's a tough one. I mean, I saw Elvin Jones in a small club up in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Which one, Iron Horse?
No, it was the. Oh man, I'm brain farting on the name. It was this. They had a regular jazz night there though.
Okay.
Maybe it was the Iron Horse. The Iron Horse Cafe?
Yeah, Iron Horse Cafe.
And you winked in the band.
Yeah,
the,
it's in
the
North
band
End. It's got to be.
It's got to be Iron Horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw Elvin Jones there, and I got a record autographed by him at the time, and I just remember being blown away because that's John Coltrane's drummer, and here he is just basically tearing fucking place up.
Right.
With 3 cats in front of him are like, we're going to stay out of your way, Mr. Jones. And I was just, the energy of that guy, and to realize essentially he's doing that every single night somewhere else. It's just like, oh, that's a fascinating character. So yeah, that would be the one that made the most impression on me because I was also at a very impressionable time. I was 20 years old or something. I was just getting into it, and there's a legend in front of me. But when I can, I like to go to the Vanguard. I like small settings.
Yeah,
I've seen stuff on a big stage, and it can be impressive. But I like that small setting.
Yeah, no, I'm same. Like my wife and I, we saw Lenny Kravitz at Webster Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to see him at Giant Stadium. I want to see him at
Right.
But even better than that, like I'm not as dope as Smooth White Boy. I did see the first hip hop show at the Stone Pony because that's where I'm from in Jersey. Yeah. It was Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul. So I love seeing people at a bar, right? Like. Yeah. I'm from the Jersey Shore. I've seen Bruce Springsteen live 3 times, all in bars, right? And I've been this close to him, because I worked for the guy who owned the bar.
I saw Rakim do the full paid in full album at BB King's.
That's not bad.
And he went through the whole album in progression. He skips Chinese Arithmetic because that's the worst song on the album. It's kind of funny. He does 1 bar. He's like, all right, we're done with that one. But yeah, that was a pretty cool show.
Yeah. So I'm a small venue guy. And I think just having told you, you're a small venue, you're a small producer. It's about the quality. Yeah. It's about it's about the ambience. It's about connection. Well, man, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. This has been fun. Thanks for being here early because you're on the Behind Two Ferns, Between Two Ferns episodes of the Black Wine Guy Experience. Right. We have a goal of moving upstairs, so hopefully, I hope you had a good time, and if we invite you back, we'd love to have you back. You passed our cool test, right. Smooth White Boy. No. But tell everybody where they can find you.
So Wine Spectator, the magazine, is available on newsstands. Our website, winespectator.com. We also have an Instagram account, wine_spectator. And then I'm also on Instagram at J Molesworth, my first initial, my last name, J Molesworth1.
There you go. So grateful for my guest, James Molesworth from the Wine Spectator. If you're not following him, you need to be following him. Mm-hmm. You need to be following the Wine Spectator. Wine Spectator was very instrumental in my wine journey. I would just, I did Wine Intelligence. I would read that, and I'd read through Wine Advocate. I'd read through everything, and then I would say, I want to try that. I want to try that.
We're in the fall now, so our issues come out bi-weekly from now through the end of the year. They kind of come out fast and furious. This is our big season. Cabernet Report will be in November 15. Champagne at the end of the year, then the top 100 and the wine of the year. So this is where it gets heady. Yeah, we're having fun.
Good, man. Good stuff. Well, thanks again for being here. And hey, it's MJ. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks.